Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a completely impartial look under the hood of a recent Sky News Australia broadcast. We aren't here to take sides at all. Instead, we're going to break down the actual mechanics of modern media. We want to see exactly how specific conservative narratives and critiques are framed for an audience. From viral internet memes all the way to government spending, let's explore how this panel builds its political arguments. The panel comes right out of the gate swinging with this striking quote, and it really sets up their core premise. They're arguing that Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's government is facing a pretty unique dual-front backlash. To them, it's not just your standard voter frustration. They suggest the administration is battling this really potent, tricky mix of red-hot anger on one side and widespread mockery on the other. So, to understand their strategy, we're going to quickly look at the four main themes they used to structure this critique. Number 1, viral memes and taxes. Number 2, the fact-check debate. Number 3, limits of political decorum. And finally, critiquing climate travel costs. Let's dive right into Section 1, viral memes and taxes. Okay, so the broadcast zeroes in on this massive wave of viral AI-generated memes that are just flooding platforms like Instagram and TikTok right now. Small business owners are jokingly creating these images of the Prime Minister basically invading their shops and boardrooms. They introduce him as their forced new co-founder who just took 47% equity in their business. It's this highly satirical, super direct response to proposed changes in the capital gains tax. Now, you might just see that and think, well, that's just internet humor. But the commentators argue it's actually a massive grassroots revolt. According to the panel, young Australians literally feel like their entrepreneurial dreams are being crushed by these new tax schemes. And because these young voters feel like home ownership and business success are just slipping through their fingers, the panel notes they're abandoning traditional voting patterns entirely. They even point to polls showing a really surprising shift toward alternative parties like One Nation. That leads us perfectly into Section 2. The fact-check debate. This right here is just a fascinating illustration of the current media divide. The panel points out that the taxpayer-funded ABC News actually brought in experts to fact-check these AI memes, literally labeling them rubbish because they lacked policy nuance, while the Sky News panel completely mocks the ABC for fact-checking what is very obviously a joke. To them, demanding wonky policy nuance for a satirical TikTok meme completely misses the forest for the trees. They argue it totally ignores the genuine underlying frustration that taxpayers are trying to express. To push this idea of a government communication failure even further, the panel brings up a leaked internal Labour Party analogy. It's about a giraffe who owns multiple houses and offsets rental losses, and a zebra who simply works for a living and pays full tax. The Conservative panel absolutely ridicules this. They call it a totally childish and insulting way to explain complex housing policy, basically arguing that the government is talking down to voters using soft toys. Moving right along to Section 3, limits of political decorum. Here, the broadcast examines a really tense recent incident involving Senator Pauline Hanson. During this hostile, caught-on-camera exchange, she aggressively told a journalist to shut up. And this one simple phrase ends up sparking a surprisingly deep debate among the panel about the right way to deal with the press. Now, this is where the panel's take really surprised me. Even though they typically support pretty aggressive critiques of the media, they warn that this specific level of crassness actually crosses a line. They argue that hot mic profanity like that just makes everyday, moderate voters super uncomfortable. It's a really interesting contrast they draw. They note that while someone like Donald Trump has built up the unique political capital to survive that kind of extreme combativeness, they believe Senator Hanson doesn't have that same luxury, and she risks alienating vital voters and stalling her own momentum. And finally, we arrive at Section 4, critiquing climate travel costs. For this last critique, the broadcast pulls a number from a Daily Telegraph report. They claim that climate change minister Chris Bowen has spent over $1 million taxpayer dollars on flights. They specifically highlight a recent trip he took to Copenhagen for a photo op with King Frederick X. But then, they immediately pair that staggering monetary cost with an environmental one. They claim his travel has generated 158,000 kilograms of carbon emissions. For Climate Minister, the panel obviously frames this metric as a massive, massive political liability. Commentator James Bolt steps in and frames this as an impossible contradiction. To the panel, it's completely binary. Either the climate is a literal existential crisis that requires politicians to cut emissions and stay grounded, or frequent global air travel is perfectly fine. And if it's the latter, they imply the crisis itself must be exaggerated. They argue the minister simply cannot have his cake and eat it too without totally destroying his core message. So they bring this all home with a conclusion that's designed to resonate right in the viewers' wallets. The panel argues that these international photo ops are incredibly tone-deaf to everyday Australians who are currently struggling with high energy bills and a severe cost of living crisis. On top of that, they assert that these trips look a lot less like vital national security work and a lot more like a taxpayer-funded job application for a cushy post-political career over in Europe. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought. We've just seen exactly how one broadcast constructs its narrative, using everything from AI memes to travel budgets to build a highly targeted critique. But looking at this really begs a much larger question. In an era of such deep political division, where one network sees a meme as dangerous misinformation, and another network sees that exact same meme as a brilliant grassroots rebellion, how does the media ecosystem you personally choose to engage with ultimately define your reality? It's definitely something to think about the next time you're scrolling through your feed. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive.